This video applies to people that are doing horizontal navigation. So some version of this type of navigation going horizontal. One change that we are going to make is right now we are using classes to drill down here, and the idea is that so that if we wanted to use lists later, unordered lists or list items, that they would still respond normally rather than taking on the basic coding. So in other words, let me just show you an example here. If we did this and we didn't use the class system and then we made an unordered list, which this is, it should be test item 1, 2, 3 vertically displayed with a bullet next to it, it would display across horizontally. But weighing all the options, especially because the W3 school has such robust information on these bars, and they don't use classes, they just write the code right for the list item, that's what we're going to do. Then if, and only if your site uses other unordered lists and it's giving you problems, all we really should have to do to fix that problem is in the CSS, once we're all done, we can just add nav in front of any of these things, which just means that an unordered list inside of nav tags. But for now, don't do this. So in other words, if your website has other lists, save those for last, and then we'll deal with that. So if you need help with that, let me know, but it really should just be a matter of every one of these you putting nav space in front of, and then like I said, any other lists that you define later would take on the normal look. So to start, we're just going to remove this class from all of these. Okay, so that's the third and final one removed. And then let's just clean up the code a little bit here, get rid of these spaces, and we'll get rid of the class that applies to the UL right here. And then now would be a good time to freeze and just make sure that all of this looks similar to mine. Now we need to switch over to the CSS and change the way that the CSS gets applied here. So instead of this saying nav list, we need to change these so instead of being the classes, they apply directly to the unordered list and the list items. So this just applies to the unordered list now. And this right here applies to links inside of the list item, and now you can see it's actually doing what it's supposed to. Okay, so let's tackle the issue of getting our navigation bar horizontal. Now there's two ways to do that, two types of code you can write in the CSS. One is, I'm just trying to get down here to show you, one is floating it and the other is, drum roll, to set up the list items to display in line. But since we're going to be doing a lot of floating, we'll just stick with floating. So, and rather than reinvent the wheel here, let's just copy the code right from the school. Command C, copy, go into Dreamweaver, paste this in, and we'll go right after the unordered list, but right before the anchors for the list items. Paste that in, clean up the code a little bit, and you can see what that's done. Make that look a little bit better, and what we'll do for now is we'll just copy Now we don't have to do this because we put this up at the top of our CSS, and I believe, yeah, we've already done that. So really all we need is actually right here for the anchors themselves is we'll go ahead and we'll align the text into the center of that element, and then we'll put some padding around it. So in our list item anchor, we will go ahead, put this in. And recall that you can write the padding for the top, the bottom, the left, the right, or you can use this shorthand notation. If you want to know the ins and outs of this, just go to padding and shows you about the shorthand values. And if you use Dreamweaver, you'll end up getting the long form. And let me just show you what I mean by that. So if we go into the CSS designer and we go to our list item A, which if it wasn't highlighted here, we could just drag across here, bring that up here, and then if we go into the layout options and go down to padding, we can see that it puts these numbers in for us. But if we happen to need to change one of them, like let's say that we wanted a little bit more on the left. So if I change this to 17, then it writes everything out for us. I'm going to Command Z that because for now, this is good enough. So we're back to the shorthand notation. This is not perfect yet. We would need a little bit more spacing here to get, a nice consistency. It just looks too close to the side here, but we're not done, and we'll worry about that once we know, once we get it closer to our final design. So we're getting closer. It'd be nice now if we had hover, and then when we were on the particular page, that it would be a different color. So we go back, we look at our design, find out what the colors and the items should be. So, and this design, when it's on the page, it becomes the same color as this header. And we don't know what the hover looks like because this is not interactive. I'll just make it white for now. But the great thing about this page here is that if yours was different, like you wanted the whole entire thing to change color, you just go into this try it yourself example and you say, hey, that's how I design mine, is that the block changes colors. And when I'm on the page, that block changes color. And you just look at this and you see what they did. And if you're not sure what's what, just go in here, like we've talked about before, and just put in a very obvious color. Click away, click run, and now you can see what that did. In fact, we'll borrow from this example and copy this. Now, look at what this is saying. It's saying that an anchor inside of a list item that is set to hover. And that would be good enough in itself. But then it goes on to say, but it does not have a class called active. So what that means is if I hover over one that does have a class of active, it won't change it red. So that's very nice and intuitive for the users. It's saying that's available, that's available, that's available, nothing's happening here. Oh, because that's where I am. So let's copy this and put that into Dreamweaver. So we'll go right after the list item anchor. And so this is what it's doing right now, but I need to change that so that it applies not to the background color, but just to the color, which means the font color, and that it changes it in my design to white, not red. So There we go. Now, to take care of making whatever page you're on a different color, in my case this color, we need to first go to the CSS, and then we need to add a class now that applies to this anchor. And then on each page we would then make the following changes. Change the href to just a £, and then move the class on the portfolio page to this anchor, on the contact page to this anchor. So right here we will type in class equals active in quotation marks, and now we will go ahead and write this. So I will copy this, Command C, and freeze this if you need to make sure the HTML is correct. Back to the CSS, we are now going to have, and we do need to put a period in front of that. Actually, we could copy all this from the W3 schools and then just adjust it to our particular color. And this should go away here as soon as we do a file save all. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. So that's saying that class active applies this color. So what does that look like? We'll take a look inside the browser. And what we just did just simply makes this change to that color on the home page. Now if we go to one of the other pages, it's not going to change because we need to do that manually, but we're not going to worry about that right now because these pages are just dummy pages. And one last thing we want to do here is set the overflow for the unordered list to hidden. And what this will do is just prevent problems when we view it on different size browsers if we did happen to have a really wide menu item. So we'll just paste that in here. And then you can see what that does is now we can see back to that color that we had. Where are you? There it is. I was expecting this just to say red, but that's the hex. So I'm just going to write red in there, make it easier for me in the future when I need to get rid of that. But that's just a background color for the nav. Okay, just a couple extras here for those of you who want to take this stuff to the next level. There was another way that we could have made the nav bar. We could go to Insert, we could go to Bootstrap components. So let's say it was on something else, you go to Bootstrap components, and we could put in the navigation from here. Now, a couple things about this. One, it writes a whole bunch of extra code in here, but the nice thing is it is responsive, meaning that if you change browser sizes, it'll change. But it makes things a lot more complicated as far as how to change the stuff. We've done all this by scratch. We know how to do it. So what if you did want to take it to the next level and make it interactive? Well, we'll go back to W3 and we scrolled far enough down on this page. You could write just the part of that code that would come with the Bootstrap that would change this from a wide screen to a narrow screen. So very interesting stuff, not expected to be learned for the beginning level class, but if you're taking an advanced level class, this would certainly be something that we could delve into. But just so you know, and if you're not interested in this, you can stop watching the video now, but what it does is it uses a media inquiry, basically asking the device accessing the website, how wide are you? And then it changes depending. So this is what a media inquiry looks like, and it's saying basically the max screen width to display the opposite way is 600 pixels, and once it gets less than that, and I think I can make this wide enough where you can see that. So this is what it would look like on a desktop, and this is what it would look like on your phone or your tablet. Very interesting and very powerful stuff.